Hey everyone, just before we get to this episode, do you want to start, grow, or monetize your podcast but feel stuck or overwhelmed? Join the Podcast Lab, a monthly membership with live training, templates, support, and a community to help you launch and grow with confidence. Get clarity, stay consistent, and finally build the podcast you've been dreaming of. Join the Podcast Lab today and take your next bold step. The link is in the description to join. Now, let's get into this episode.
No one has talked about that gap. And the feedback is really like, oh my gosh, that's super, super niche. I can't believe it. To that's amazing. But what is actually really, really standing out for the people that think nobody is going to want to listen to what I'm talking about, you actually have a built-in audience. So what I feel is that these podcast events and attending them and meeting new people and hearing new information is like that synaptic burst that kind of motivates you again. That was the biggest source of my frustration because everyone was saying, you've got to use this software. You've got to use this platform. Easiest thing, editing will be brilliant. Well, guess what? None of it was brilliant for me.
Hey everyone, welcome in today again. Now, if you think that you have a podcast that is too niche, wait till you hear this episode that I did today. I spoke with Manisha Solomon, who has a podcast called the Archery Parent Podcast. And we had a great conversation. She went through her entire journey in podcasting and shared all of the ups and the downs. And we're going to get into it right now. So get your notepad ready, get your pen, and make sure you take some notes because there was a lot of things that she shared that you can learn to apply to your podcast to get more downloads, to start monetizing, and give you some ideas so that you can take your podcast to the next level. All right. So let's get into this conversation right now. For those people who are hearing about you for the first time, can you maybe introduce yourself? Let us know a little bit about you, a little bit about your podcast, and anything else that you want to share with all of the millions of listeners that may be listening to this episode.
Thank you. Yes. So the Archery Parent Podcast is what archery parents need to know to best support their archer. So my name is Manisha, and I am an archery mom, and I've been an archery mom for almost 11 years. My archer, my son, started archery in about 2014, a little more recreationally and informally. It was actually the Pan Am Games in 2015 in Toronto at Varsity Stadium, where everything changed for him. So he went from a recreational, sort of having fun kind of archer to, I want to do that. I want to do international, and I want to get to the Olympics. So His trajectory changed so significantly. And that was because archery became mainstream for just a little bit because it's part of one of the sports for the Pan Am Games. And one of the reasons why I decided to start a podcast was because parents, knowing that I've been sort of around the block, so to speak, for an extended period of time, Reese and I, we travel throughout the US and Canada quite extensively. So they would come to us and say, how do I do this? What do I need to know? I have a question about this. Or what does this mean? Or why is this happening? And so they would come to me as a resource. And so I thought, why am I doing this just one by one? Why don't I put something together and do it in one place and have it dynamically move? I know what people are asking. I know what parents need to know. And why don't I just do it?
Wow. Okay. So this is great. So let me just backtrack just to make sure I catch everything. So you've been in archery for about 10 years now. So your son is the archer and you've been supporting him, taking him to all of the tournaments in Canada and I guess the US as well, or wherever the tournaments are. And over the course of those 10 years, you've been receiving a lot of questions because of your involvement in supporting your son. And the light bulb came off in your head saying, hey, maybe I should just start a podcast and answer all of these questions and kind of direct people to the podcast to listen to get more insight and direction. Did I summarize that okay?
Definitely, yes. And now, as of last year, as of 2024, he has moved on into international competition. And actually for Canada, for the Paris Olympics, was an alternate for the Olympics for Team Canada.
Oh, wow. He was an alternate. That's an amazing. I have a friend who was actually, she did wrestling and she was an alternate as well. The amount of effort and energy it takes to get to that level is tremendous. So kudos to your son for making it to that level. Hopefully next Olympics, he'll actually be one of the main competitors in that area. That'll be so awesome and a huge experience. And I'm guessing that you have learned a lot through this journey of him getting to become an alternate in the Olympics. That's so wonderful. I don't even know where to start, but let's go here. So the main reason why you started the podcast was to answer all of those questions that you have gotten one by one by other parents on how to support your archer. So I notice on your podcast now, again, it's fairly new, you do a lot of interviews with other people on your podcast. How do you find people to interview for your podcast? Is there like a group that you're a part of or is it you just pick and choose? Or how does that work? How do you find people to interview on your podcast?
So as you mentioned, we are fairly new, and I say we as in the collective we, but it is me. I have grown in the community so that I have sort of become a face that a lot of people know, and over the years have created great relationships. And so I can just ask people, this is what I want to talk about. I think you have a great fit for sharing information for parents. And one of the things about archery and why this podcast really has a significant position in it is because archery is not really known for information sharing to the parents. There is so much information, quite prolifically, for archers. Everything from equipment, how to shoot, your form, everything like that. What do you need to take to a tournament? How do you fletch arrows? There are so many resources for that. However, the void was information sharing for parents. How many parents, when they begin the archery parent journey, I'll say, we don't really know how long a tournament is. It can be all day. And you're waking up at 5:30 in the morning. Do people know that? No. Do people know that their archer should really be arriving an hour and a half before a competition? No. What do you need? Do they know? It's really, really the small things that this information is not shared. Everything from shoes. You can't just run out, so to speak, and grab your archer running shoes because running shoes don't actually work for archery. And we're going to actually talk about that. So it's a very niche podcast, but it's a very niche category of equipment, resources, everything that people need for archery is so specific. And it's one thing for an archer to know, but the majority of archers as they're beginning are, ages 9 to 15, 9 to 18. And if parents don't have the buy-in, then your archer is not joining the community. So why not educate? Right. Why not give archery parents as much information as they need to really be fulfilled and informed while they're spending hours and hours and hours at either the range and hours at the range during training sessions, at competitions? Why not enlighten them and give them the information that they need so that they're happier and they know what's going on? It's not like soccer. You can play soccer anywhere as long as you have a ball. There are baseball diamonds in nearly every single community. There are organizations that, people sign their kids up for T-ball and in Canada, Timbit soccer immediately. It's not like that in Canada or the US or so many other countries for archery. So the podcast is to help parents navigate their way through the community and just have them informed. And the ripple effect, actually, the more informed a parent is, the easier job the coach has. because they're not dividing their time between informing parents and spending time with archers. The more time a coach has with an archer, the better the archer will be, the more confident the archer will be. And then that just ripples, and then everybody's happy. So it plays a small role, but the ripple effect is significant.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so, and because it's so niche, because the community is very small, you have connections to so many people in that community. You're able to say, hey, I'm talking about archery shoes. Would you be able to come on my podcast and give us a breakdown, or so that we can equip parents so that they know what type of shoes to get for their archer that is just starting? That's basically the gist of how you're getting guests and how they're contributing to your podcast. Did I get that right?
Yes, definitely. And so the people that we're speaking to are high performance athletes who have been through it. They know the type of shoe that they prefer. They've been through the testing process. So high performance athletes, celebrity athletes, parents, we talk to coaches. So we are really trying to get a broad spectrum of input and opinions. And so we've got our Instagram. Instagram actually has smaller pieces of information, of little extra nuggets of information in addition to the podcast. So Instagram and social media definitely parallel the information that we're providing in our episodes. But there's even more. So we're trying to share a lot of information in different ways.
Yeah, this is great. Now, it's really, the reason why I say this is great is because I think there's a lot of people out there who have some very niche interests, and they might not even had the thought to start a podcast about that very specific thing that they're interested in. But here you are. Your podcast is not about archery, but the target is for the parents, right? So it's not really a podcast about archery, though it is, but it's mainly targeted for the parents. Again, so it's like a niche within a niche. And what I'm hearing is it's really important because the success of, or how equipped the parent is, determines how successful the archer will become, right? So I could totally see the value in doing what you're doing. So the advice that I would take from what you're saying and share it for all the other people out there listening is, if you have a very specific niche or a very specific interest and you're wondering if you should start a podcast, you can take it from Manisha and what she's doing with the Archery Parent Podcast, right? Who would have think that, parents need a podcast about archery and how to support their archers? But here you are doing it, and you're doing a great job at it as well. Let me transition a little bit. In terms of the why, right? Why would you start a podcast versus starting maybe a blog or like a newsletter? Why a podcast?
I actually used to be a writer, so the thought of a blog would be right up my alley. I do have a blog as part of our website, which is archeryparentpodcast.ca. The reason of the podcast is I like the dynamic ability of it. I like the interview process. I like being able to share information more sort of real time. And I like the interaction with the guest. I love the researching aspect of it. And I love the growth that a podcast can do, because a question will lead to a question, will lead to a question. And I love being able to ask those questions and share, but almost in a way selfishly, I'm learning so much from my guests. So I love being able to acquire the information, acquire knowledge. Something about me is I love, and I say the word useless in a very positive way, but I've got so much useless information in my brain that I can pull out at any second. And I love just having information at the ready and being able to get it from an expert.
Wow, wonderful. Okay. So this is really good. Like, my brain is just going, there's so much things that I want to ask you. What has the feedback been since you started your podcast? So it's only a few months old. You started in November 2024. We're in the end of February now when we're recording this. What has the feedback been since you started your podcast?
So I've had feedback on many different levels. So anywhere from thank you so much. The information that you're sharing is really changing the perspective that archery parents have. A lot of parents, they only come from sort of loud sports, a lot of cheering, right, a lot of yelling, a lot of interaction with whomever is on the field. Archery is actually quiet, and it's good and bad, but it's not like golf kind of quiet. It's just quiet all the time. There's a lot of focus that goes in it. There's not a lot of clapping after a shot like in golf. And it's very different. And parents really feel like their ability to support, and I'm using that in quotation marks, to support their archer is going to come in physical, emotive methods of communication. But that's kind of not the way the archery works. So I've had other parents say, thank you so much, because I've been able to actually talk to my archer about the tough things, like, how do you want me to act? How do you want to talk about archery when it's a really bad day? They learn so much about their own archer, their own child. And so I've had a lot of thank you for that. And one of the other things is that I've also gotten feedback from other people who have thought, why didn't I think of that? Because no one has talked about that gap that I'm starting to fill. And the feedback is really like, oh my gosh, that's super, super niche. I can't believe it. To that's amazing. But what is actually really, really standing out is that I am the only archery mom with a podcast. There is one co-host, but there is no other podcast out of all of the archery podcasts that are out there. Again, all geared towards archers. None of them are hosted by an archery mom with this perspective. So I think it's taking people aback a little bit, and people are also finding it quite refreshing.
Yeah. And again, like I said, it's very good because there might be people listening that think that nobody would be interested in talking about whatever the specific topic is from my perspective. But here you are proving them wrong, right? Because you're able to bring the perspective of what it is to be a parent of an archer, right? And your perspective and your insight and how parents need to equip themselves and prepare themselves or to help their children be successful in that. So that's so wonderful. And again, I hope this is clicking in for the people who are listening, because I think that this is really, really important because, like I said, I know that there are a lot of people who maybe have very specific interests that they think, no one's going to want to hear anything about that from my perspective. But you're proving them wrong right now with your podcast, which is so wonderful. So what was the most favorite episode that you've ever done so far?
Actually, one thing I just wanted to add to what you just said, for the people that think nobody is going to want to listen to what I'm talking about, you actually have a built-in audience. They are there. You just have to tell them about it. It is built in. It's not like a very generic topic that you have to, yes, you do have to promote, you do have to market, you do have to let people know and share that it even exists. But the market is there. They will find you if you know where to find them. So it's not as hard as you think. And chances are there are so many sponsors that are out there as well.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that people kind of get hung up on. Like, am I just going to be doing this for nothing? Or is there any chance for sponsorship or any type of, monetary increase or value in the future, right? So again, these are all possibilities that are out there. But again, to narrow down your niche, and if you think that you're doing something that is kind of too specific, chances are, like you said, the audience is already there, probably just waiting for you. So tell me your favorite episode. I really want to hear it. I really want to know which one it was. So go ahead.
So we have released 6, and each one of them is very dear to my heart, and really trying to focus on what the questions are over the years that I've received. The one was, and actually I've been very privileged and I'm so grateful to have been able to interview Vanessa Lee, who World Archery is the world governing body for archery. And she's on the communications team and travels all over the world and her role actually is to do the behind the scenes storytelling of archery tournaments. And she was just at the Olympics in Paris. And her conversation was so great because she's a very open person when sharing her experiences as an archer and then becoming a communications team member for World Archery. And it was so nice. And what was really making it memorable for me was that she was the very first person that when I said, I have this project, I was wondering if you could be part of it. She was the first person that said yes, because she believed in me. And that trust that she put in me and what I was doing, I really didn't have the specifics about it. But the fact that she trusted me and came on as the first guest really blew me away. And that will always be my favorite in the sense of being memorable. The most recent episode I did was with Julie Bergen, who is a string maker in California. And strings are pretty much the most important part of archery. If you don't have a string, you really can't do it. So that was a different direction because it was the first that we did and released about something very, very specific technically. So that was fun because I learned a lot about her. And, but it is hard to choose a favorite because each one of them have really great information and nuance. and so, yeah, it is hard.
Yeah, I feel you sound like a mother who has a whole bunch of kids and your kids are your podcast episodes. You can't pick a favorite, but they're all your favorite, right? But what I will say is that first interview, what was the name of the person that you said who was the communications person for the archery community? What was her name?
Vanessa Lee.
So what I would say, that probably gave you a really huge confidence boost as you start your podcast, to have someone from that level come back and say, yeah, I would absolutely want to be on this podcast with you. I would, like, my confidence would have been like through the roof if I got a yes from a person from that level. So, I mean, kudos to you for, landing that guest. Now, we did talk just before we hit the record button. And for everyone who doesn't know, well, I think everyone knows myself. I'm from Canada, but you're from Canada as well. And we were just talking before we hit the record button about a conference that was recently put on in Toronto this past weekend. And I didn't even know about it. I didn't know about it until I talked to you. But it was called PodCamp, right? Am I saying it right? It was PodCamp, right? So you were there. Can you share maybe one of the things that you learned from that podcast? And again, the hope is that we can help someone else out there who is in podcast world, maybe just trying to start their podcast now. And can you share what was one of your big takeaways from that conference that you went on this past weekend?
Yes. So I will just give you a little bit of information about what PodCamp is. So PodCamp and PodCamp itself as an entity takes place all over the world. And this is the Toronto edition. And this conference in particular has been going on, I believe, for 16 years annually. And this year and last year, so this was my second year, it has taken place at George Brown College. And it is structured so that there are 3, sometimes 4 breakout sessions or workshops with speakers that have submitted their topics and been approved, anywhere from beginner, intermediate to advanced podcaster. But the information and the speakers are really fantastic and they're in the industry. So you're getting a lot of, it's not just podcaster experience. You're hearing from audio people. You're hearing from professors within the podcasting and social media world. You're getting different perspectives from the podcasting community, which is so valuable. And one of the great workshop sessions that I was at was about how to get high profile celebrity guests on your show. And one of the things as an archery podcast, everybody, no matter what, either knows somebody who tried archery or loves an archery related movie or took it when they were in summer camp or in gym class or something. So it is intriguing for everyone. And after that, it was called Big Guest Energy from Sean Sirianni, is who was the facilitator of that workshop. After that, and it was in my mind, but he kind of created the catalyst to move forward. It's like, why not? Why shouldn't I get celebrity guests on my podcasts? Why not do an episode, I don't know, with Jennifer Lawrence and talk about her experience with archery in the Hunger Games, or Brie Larson, who took it up, or Jeremy Renner. Why not, right? So the beauty of PodCamp and any other podcast, either meetup or any sort of podcast community event, what I find for me is that it helps, and I'm going to use the analogy of a neuron in our bodies. Neuronal activity is, there's a synaptic spark, if you will, and you're all excited and you're really motivated and you're doing all this stuff for your podcast. And eventually that excitement wanes and then you need another burst. So what I feel is that these podcast events and attending them and meeting new people and hearing new information is like that synaptic burst that kind of motivates you again. And especially when you're in places like me, I'm in Niagara, where I don't have a lot of connection with the podcast community here. There's a small handful of people. It's so nice to be inspired by other people and be with like-minded people and troubleshoot if you need to. Bring your questions. And it's so nice to be part of something like PodCamp. And they actually, Jennifer and John, they actually put other events on throughout the year. And they are also responsible for the Canadian Podcast Awards that are annually awarded as well. So they really have become such a important entity in the Canadian podcasting community on a bigger scale. And if I would really encourage anybody to be part of one of the events. And PodCamp itself, this year they had 3 ticket tiers. They had, the champion ticket, they had a general admission ticket, but to make sure that it is completely accessible and everybody can be included, they actually have a $0 free ticket so that you can still attend every single workshop if you want. So they want people to be involved and they really want people to become and be part of the community. And I just want to shout out to Al Greco. He has created the Canadian Podcaster Discord, and I can provide that information to you there. Over 200 Canadian podcasters are part of that Discord channel. And it's just nice to be part of something there too that, again, a place to troubleshoot. You can learn about events and be part of a place where the people, we're all kind of thinking the same thing, right?
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I didn't even think about this before, right? But like you talked about how to land big guests, like celebrity guests. Like if you look at those movies, like you mentioned Jennifer Lawrence, my wife loves the Hunger Games, so I've watched all of them, but I know she has a bow and arrow in that movie. But, it would be really cool to have her on your podcast and maybe just having her, given her experience if she had to do any training, before she did the movie about archery and what she had to learn in order to, do that role. That would be so amazing. And landing big guests on your podcast. I mean, that's something I would assume that there is some skill or some very specific tactics that are involved, in landing big guests on your podcast. So that's so wonderful that you went to this podcast. I'm going to see you there next year because for sure I'm going to go now that I know about it. So this is called PodCamp. So, and you know what I'm going to do also? For everyone out there listening, I'm going to put links for your podcast, for your website, for all the things that we've spoken about, maybe for PodCamp as well. I'm going to put links for all those things in the description because the hope is if there is any parents out there whose kids are just starting in archery, and I would hope that they would want to listen to your podcast, after listening to this, to get more insight so that they can be better prepared to be an archery parent and help their child succeed in that area so that, they can make it to the Olympics like how your son, recently did. That's totally, totally awesome, right? Now, so we talked about some of the things that you learned from PodCamp. Can you maybe explain some of the challenges that you have faced, right? So you're a fairly new podcaster still. So what were some of the challenges that you have faced since you started?
So this grand idea popped into my head in 2023. So it was a long time coming. And again, because I didn't know the community existed, I didn't know anybody in the podcast world, I went about it myself, gathering information. And when you're in that position, there's so much information out there. How to launch a podcast in 10 days. Oh, you have to do this. Take my 5-day, online course. Googling, asking AI, what are the different steps? And the information overload that happens can really, really be stifling, and it can really, really slow your progress. It can slow the excitement.
Ready to launch your podcast the right way? If you ever dreamed about starting your own podcast but don't know where to begin, this is your moment. I've been podcasting for years and helping others to do the same. Now I'm bringing everything that I've learned into a brand new live 6-week podcasting class. Each week I'll walk you through the exact steps to go from idea to launch. Even if you're on a tight budget or a short time frame, you'll get no fluff, no overwhelm, just a clear roadmap to building a podcast that actually lasts. This is a live, hands-on group class, which means that you'll be able to ask me questions, get feedback, and build your show with real support from me. And you will be transformed into a podcaster by the time we finish. And because I want to keep it intimate and impactful, the spots are very limited. So if you're serious about starting your podcast and want to do it right, join the waitlist through the link in the description, and you'll be one of the first to know when the course opens. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. So let's turn that podcast dream into a reality.
It's so easy to falter at the beginning, right? It's so easy to go, should I really do this? This just seems like so much work. And it is truly a lot of work, especially at the beginning. My impression of what I was doing, this was never a hobby. This is not me just to do this. I wanted to create a business out of this. And so I wanted high quality right from the beginning, all of my artwork to be high quality. And I wanted to set up all the social media platforms. I wanted to be ready so that when I did launch, like you said, in the end of November, I wanted to be everywhere already. So figuring out workflow, and honestly, I still haven't figured out my workflow. I have yet to really nail down all the progress that I'm doing in the proper order because, again, in a way, almost to the detriment is that I wanted to be everywhere. So I still have to be everywhere. So yes, there's automation. There are other things that I can do to make my life a little bit easier. But that has been really one of the challenges is continuing the motivation to go forward without getting overwhelmed, but also knowing how to sift through that information when you need it, because you're going to be inundated with so much that you don't really need to know how to monetize when you're just starting out. yes, there are options to monetize right from the beginning, but you don't know the information you need to know until there's too much of it. So information overload, overwhelm, making sure that you're maintaining your motivation and trying to be part of a community is going to help during that beginning. So those are the things that I found most challenging. And as I have progressed through, I'm now we've just released the 6th episode. It's all kind of falling into place now, which is a relief.
Yeah, very, very much so. Yeah. But what you mentioned, though, is the idea coming in 2023, and then you launching the podcast in November 2024. That time frame, or I don't want to call it procrastinating because I don't know what you were doing during that time, but that time frame, most podcasters who do start have like a gap from when the idea first comes till when the episode actually launches. And what you're describing, it's paralysis by analysis. All right, you have a whole bunch of information out there. You want to start a podcast, you go to Google, you Google this, and then you get a long list of stuff, and then you listen to one person, and then they tell you to do this, and then you find another person, they tell you to do something that might be a little bit different, and then they tell you why, and then you might see another person, and you get to a place where you're like, okay, now I don't even know what to do, and it just delays the process. But I'm glad that you were able to overcome all of that and actually start. My advice to everyone out there would be figure out how to do the basics and just start and learn as you go. And then as you continue to go, you can adjust what works, take away the things that don't work, add the things that do work, and then grow as you continue to progress. That's my advice to everybody.
Right. I will just go back. So the idea came to me in about September of 2023. In October of 2023, I actually recorded almost 10 episodes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So right from the beginning. Where the, paralysis happened was because I chose a podcast recording platform and editing platform that I didn't realize my computer could not handle. So that was the biggest source of my frustration because everyone was saying, you've got to use this software. You've got to use this platform. Easiest thing, editing will be brilliant. Well, guess what? None of it was brilliant for me. There was one episode, it cut off, and we ended up having to do 13 little segments for one episode. It took us 2 hours and everything was sort of falling apart. I went through early days, the rite of passage of forgetting to press the record button.
Hit the record button.
And I had to ask her to do that segment again. So really frustrating with technology. And I have now moved to another platform that is much easier. I actually had to upgrade my computer, my actual laptop, meaning. And I did find someone who was able to help me a little bit with the sound engineering. But I have learned to do it all by myself now. So
very good.
My paralysis came not so much out of the information gathering, but it was from the little things that they don't tell you and stumbling through the troubleshooting phases to get to this point.
Right. Let's transition on that point. Let's talk about some of the technical aspects of your podcast. Now, I mentioned before your backdrop, which is totally cool. So for those people who are listening, Manisha has a archery target board behind her as her backdrop. And for those of you who are watching the video, you can see it. So let's talk about some of your setup, right? So you have your hardware, your software, your computer. Give us a little insight of what you've used to produce your podcast.
So I will start with, I am now using Riverside as my recording software. I do use Descript for my editing. I do use Descript, but Riverside, I do use some of their preliminary editing as well.
Right.
For the artwork, I use Canva. For I have a Shure MV7 microphone here that I'm using. And I've got lighting. I've got MacBook that I use when recording. Lighting, ring light, microphone. And actually, the room I'm in has about 30 black, charcoal, purple, and red huge acoustic panels that have helped. Yeah, that this room that I'm in, I live in an older home built in 1941. So all the walls are actually plaster, which, if you ask anybody, is one of the worst conduits for sound. So I needed to make the space, I need to soundproof sound treat the room. Mm-hmm. And that has been a big, big help significantly for me. Despite all the studio sound options for editing and everything, being able to treat the room really made a difference for me. I have Sennheiser HD 280 Pro headphones, and I have a lot of little adapter gadgets and things. And so the reason also why I thought, why not a podcast, is because I'm also an actor and I do a lot of self-tapes and auditions. So I already had the microphone. I already had all the lighting. I already had the various methods for backdrop. So why not? I didn't have to go out and buy any equipment, which was great. I didn't have to go through all of that information. And just in addition, so the target that I have is a 122 centimeter target, which is used in target archery. And depending on the category, usually this target is placed 70 meters away from the shooting line. So I thought, it's colorful, it's meaningful, and why not use it as a backdrop?
Yeah, that's wonderful. So it's one of the things that I really love, and you mentioned it, right? You had things already, so you didn't need to go out and buy too much more things to start a podcast, right? One of the things that I love, and I tell this to people all the time, is use what you have first, right? And I think a lot of people may have gone through this, myself included. I wanted to use Descript to do some editing as well. This was a couple years ago. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go and use Descript. Oh, it's so fast to just go in there and just, do whatever. And I downloaded it onto my laptop. And then my laptop was just like, sorry, no, this doesn't work. And it just froze. And I was just like, okay, just like you, I needed to get a new laptop in order to use some of these programs. So the takeaway, so the technical part of this interview, right? The takeaway from it is, yes, a lot of those tools out there are really wonderful to use. They can make the process really easy, but be very careful of your capacity and the system requirements for those softwares, because you want to make sure that your laptop or your computer, whatever you're using, can run those programs efficiently and don't leave you hanging, or leave something frozen for like 2 hours while it tries to process it, right? That's you never want that to happen while you've probably been there, right? I know I have, right?
It was horrible. I would try to, for those that are not familiar, so the first step in Descript is that you upload your audio or video, and it actually will create a transcript so that you can do text-based editing from that. And people said, oh, it should only really take 5 minutes, like max. Okay, well, why is it taking mine? And why is it not even working? More than a half hour. I'd be lucky if I got 1 or 2 lines. And people are like, well, no, it should work. I know it should work, but it's not. And then it was only, I think it was someone so many questions later that went, how old's your computer? What kind of computer are you using? And I was able to upgrade. What a difference.
Yeah, I've been there too. I've been there too.
Oh my gosh, what
the very same process, actually, that first process when you upload your audio file and it starts to transcribe it. Oh, I literally put it, I've uploaded something and then I left it. This is my old computer, and I left it, had dinner with my family, cleaned the kitchen, and then I went back down to my laptop and I saw that it still hadn't finished yet. And I was just like, this laptop needs to be donated to somebody else who can use it, but I need to get another one so that I can use the script. So the very important lesson is to look at the system requirements of whichever software you're going to use and to see if your laptop can handle using that program. Now, there was something that you mentioned a little while ago. I just wanted to touch on a little bit because this might be important for people out there who are just getting into podcasts. You mentioned that you wanted your podcast to be something like a business for it to generate revenue. And I know that you also have some verbiage about a foundation or something to that extent related to your podcast. You want to explain to us maybe the thought process or the plan, the business plan, whatever you want to share about it, or how it works with a foundation, how that all works and how you plan to generate revenue through your podcast for your, I guess, through attend the archery tournaments and other stuff like that. How does it work?
Yes. So, of course, as you get to know me, there's always something in the works. So there's always some sort of bigness and an idea or two that I have. So
you sound like me.
That's why we're getting to be friends, Chris.
There you go. Right.
Where do I start? It wasn't just to be a podcast. It wasn't just to talk. I love sharing information. So that's part of it. And I found a niche, I found a void that I could fill, and I am able to share information there. Great. So that's one aspect of my wheel. If the podcast is the cog of this wheel, the spokes that are coming off of that wheel are going to be, yes, it would be great to eventually make money from this podcast. However, I wanted to give back. So if the overarching story is how can I give back to the archery community? Number one is I'm going to share information. Number two, I want to create in Canada the largest, funnest, biggest on all levels archery tournament. I actually have a background in sports events organization. And one of the things I used to do, I used to organized one of the largest citizen mountain bike races in all of Canada. At one point, we had 2,500 mountain bikers making their way through Niagara, and I helped with that for 16 years. So event planning, I love. Like, it is my favorite thing. So I want to organize an amazing tournament here in Canada. There are so many examples of great tournaments in the US. Why can't we have them here in Canada? So that is one of the spokes. And the foundation is, as many of us know, funding for athletes at no matter what level you're at in Canada, well, around the world for the most part, is so lacking. And I want to, again, in my way of giving back to the archery community, I want to be able to fund archers at any level in Canada with their expenses so that they don't have to fundraise, so that they can attend larger tournaments sort of outside of their local, so that they actually help in their development. Can they go into the US for tournaments? Can they go to bigger tournaments? And so I want to be able to give back, not just with information, but monetarily, which will assist in the growing of the community on a whole, but also assist in the development of archers in Canada. So the methods of fundraising for the foundation will be through the podcast. I will eventually be donating a portion of that through sponsorship and everything. But also, this tournament will be a source of funding for that foundation. And one of the things I'm in the works for, the first step should be actually delivered this week. So I'm kind of super excited about that. Okay. I am starting a line of archery-inspired apparel and giftware. And actually, one of the things will be one of these necklaces that I'm starting. Oh, and a bracelet. So if you notice, they are the same color as the backdrop that I have.
So So ever since we started this interview, my eye has been drawn to that necklace that you're wearing. And I realized that it's the same as the target board. So it's really catchy, actually. It's really nice. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but my eye caught it as soon as we got on the call. So it's really nice. Well designed.
Thank you. It's actually a photograph that I took in 2019 at a local tournament. It's actually my son's target from 70 meters away. So in target archery, on the shooting line, everyone is able to have a spotting scope. And what I did was I put my phone up to the spotting scope lens and I took several photos of my son's target 70 meters away. And this was the photo that came out. So I sat on it. Oh, I think it's a great photo, but what am I ever going to do with it? And I met someone who is local to Niagara who creates these necklaces. And I asked her if she would do a custom piece. And so I have a line of different necklaces with different archery inspired quotes and archery relevant quotes that will be coming out. Actually, the largest archery tournament is actually next week. The largest archery tournament in the world is next week. So I am preparing to launch it next week, this whole line. So I'll be sure to send you the information for that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this is great. I am just so glad that I got a chance to speak to you about your podcast. The moment I saw you entered in the information on the form and I started looking you up, I'm just like, I really need to talk to her. I really need to talk to her. So this has been so great, Manisha. We're just about to wrap up. Can you give everybody out there just one final piece of insight or encouragement related to their podcast?
Find a community. Going to places like PodCamp or any sort of podcast meetup, go find your people because they will inspire you. Meet new people that, even if their podcasts have nothing to do with yours, they are your people. And what I find so amazing about events like PodCamp, I said it was my second year attending. The first year, I was kind of thinking, I'm 50. I'm kind of thinking that I'm going to be the oldest person there. So not true. Podcasters are every single age. And it is very noticeable to other attendees that, it's not just a bunch of university students. It's not just 20-somethings. It's every single age and everybody has a message. And share it. This is your opportunity to just share it. It doesn't matter what software you're using. It doesn't matter what your equipment is. Just share your message. It will get out there. I mean, don't think that it's going to be instantaneous, gratitude from the masses, but sorry to take this, but just do it. Just get out there and share your message no matter what it is. And there's a big push, niche down, niche down, niche down. I am one of the nichiest niche podcasts ever. And, that's cool. And everybody is amazed by it whenever they hear about it. Just get out there and just start talking.
Yeah. One of the things I usually say is use what you have to make it happen. So, Manisha, this has been a wonderful conversation. I am going to put links for your podcast and for all of your socials and everything that we've talked about in this conversation. Your jewelry too. I'm going to make sure send me all the links. I'm going to put it all in the description below. So if anyone listening out there wants to connect with Manisha, listen to her podcast and learn how to support your young archer, go and listen to her podcast. Links are below. So Manisha, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad that I was able to connect with you. This has been great. So thank you so much.
It's been great, Chris. Fellow Canadian, thank you so much.
Yes.
The business line for the giftware and the jewelry and apparel is actually called One Arrow at a Time. So one of the slogans for the podcast is we're doing this one arrow at a time. So one step at a time, one arrow at a time, just focus on one thing at a time. And yes, I look forward to meeting you in person eventually. So
it's gonna happen.
Yes, onward and upward. May your arrows fly straight.
Oh, I love it. I love that.